So this is going to be a fairly simple Q&A. Obviously, last week I started the long-awaited reboot for the Ethan and Lucas characters. This was, you know, and so now that it's out there, I can finally talk about it after, you know, about 2 years of not being able to say anything. Even up to, you know, when I did mention it, I wasn't even able to say, okay, I did this for the first issue of Analogue DPad. Instead, I had to say, I did this for the first issue of the new Ethan and Lucas adventures. And the reason for that is that I didn't want to... I couldn't tell people what the reboot was, because I've been doing this for 12 years now, and I know people, and I know how resistant to change people are. So if say if a year and a half ago I had said, I'm going to be bringing Ethan and Lucas back as gaming superheroes, people would have flipped. They would have, without even seeing it or hearing anything really about it, they would have, I guarantee you, they would have instantly said, no, absolutely not. That's not what I want. I'm not going to like it. I hate it already. So it was really something that had to be, I had to show people that it's okay, that things can be different, but it's still going to be, you know, the Ethan and Lucas that you know. So that's why, so that's been really frustrating for me for like the last 2 years is having to be so vague about it. And so, but like I said, now it's out there. People are reading it. Some people have read the full issue. Some people are reading. They're up to page 6. So this is going to be a fairly spoiler-free Q&A. I'm not going to spoil the issue. I'm not going to spoil future issues. But I'll be happy to talk about, answer any questions that I can in regards to the process leading up to it, what my general thoughts are on these characters going forward, and what I'd like to do with them, why I went this route, all that kind of stuff. So feel free to throw questions out in the Twitch chat. I also have some questions from our Facebook and Twitter that I'll try and get to, a couple from patrons as well. So you know, if we hit a lull for Twitch questions, I'll go to those. You know, I imagine this will probably take about 30 to 60 minutes. It depends on how long-winded some of my answers are, I guess, and how long interesting questions keep coming along. So we're just after 6 now, so I'm going to go ahead and start taking questions. And I apologize in advance if I butcher anybody's screen names. All right, so what are his energy arrows? They are, I don't want to say they're magic, but they're definitely not technology based. It's not like Spider-Man's web slingers or something like that. He doesn't have a device that allows him to conjure those. They are their energy. It's like you know, like Superman's heat vision or something. That's his superpower, his ability to conjure those. You know, the origin of those and Ethan's superpower as well, I will touch on in an eventual and inevitable origin story. So Random Couch asks, okay, and this is going to be, and a lot of people are going to have this question, so we may as well get this one out of the way early. Random Couch asks, will we be seeing Lila and Zeke again in some form? Yes, in some form. I don't think that that's necessarily a spoiler to say that those characters will come back as well. But I am going to say that I'm not going to tell you how they're going to come back. I will tell you that like everything else, they're going to be a little bit different. And also, I would say, don't look for them in the near future. In the same way that way back when I first started Ctrl+Alt+Delete and the first Ethan story, it was a little while before we saw Lila, and then it was a little while before we saw Zeke. It's going to be the same way here. You know, I want to take some time. I want us to get to know this Ethan and Lucas and their alter egos. You know, kind of start getting them, building a foundation for their lives before I start throwing in these additional characters. But of course, Lila and Zeke were such huge parts of the original story. I would definitely love to bring them back. I have plans to bring them back, but like I said, I mean, it might be 3, 4, 5, 6 issues before that happens, because I'm not going to just, I didn't want to just start with like throwing them all back into the mix together right off the bat. You know, because there's a whole lot of opportunity there for storytelling, and in you know, how Ethan and Lucas, or I'm sorry, how Ethan and Lila meet for the first time again, and same thing with Zeke, how Zeke comes into their lives. So so I will say, rest assured that I do have plans for those characters in this reincarnation, this reboot, but you're just going to have to be a little bit patient with me on those. So let's see. So DOS7 asks, why did you decide to do a superhero story? All right, so here's this is going to be one of those long-winded answers. Way back, like before you guys even knew that I was ending that story, when I was even first contemplating ending that story, the original plan was in fact to reboot it in a very similar fashion, where it's just a couple guys, you know, renting a house or an apartment, and you know, they work at or run a game store. It's going to be very similar, and that was the plan for a very long time, even right up through when I ended the strip. I still thought that that's what I was going to do. So I ended the story, and then I sat down and I started plotting out what my plan was for these characters for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I was having, and so I'm going through that. You know, I'm coming up with story ideas for year 1, for year 2, and I'm having fun with that. But then, you know, a little ways into it, I'm starting to feel not as excited about, you know, as I am about that initial, you know, that initial burst of like, okay, here's something different, and that will be fun for the first few years. But as I plotted it out, I realized that I was going to end up in largely the same place. And so the reason for that was I took a step back and I asked myself, what is it that I want to do? What are the kinds of things that I want to write? Obviously, I like writing the Ethan and Lila relationship stuff. I like writing the Ethan and Lucas best friend stuff. And you can see it through that initial storyline. I also want to do things like drama and action and romance. And so, in order to do those story elements with what amounts to like a 2 guys on a couch video game comic strip, you have to. I had to come up with some very kind of out there and weird, you know, storylines in order to facilitate like having any sort of an action scene or any kind of like, you know, I mean, anything out you know, out of the ordinary for normal people. And so I'm trying to, so I'm sitting, I'm trying to think, you know, how am I going to satisfy this itch? How am I going to write all of like this whole story that I wanted to write? When it dawned on me that I had actually already sort of done that with the original Analogue and DPad, in that allows me to do everything that I want to do with these characters. You know, I can still scale it back at any point I want. I could do a whole issue just about, you know, I can leave the superhero thing on the shelf because they do have their normal everyday lives. So for an issue, I can just say, let's focus on what's going on, you know, with their personal lives. You know, something that they have to deal with. But the idea of, you know, making them superheroes means that everything's on the table, so that I can do that, but I can also, you know, in a very natural and organic way, you know, do these fight scenes and all this other really kind of cool stuff. And not only that, but it also sets up, you know, whereas in the original storyline, you know, certain things, you know, I mean, I didn't adhere strictly to reality and entirely what makes sense. You know, obviously I had Ethan create a sentient robot, and there was a dude that was being mind controlled by a penguin. But that stuff was kind of like, in what was otherwise a very ordinary world, that stuff, you know, you take it with a grain of salt, you suspend your disbelief, but it was also kind of all, like, it always felt to me a little bit like, all right, that's a little weird. But in this universe, all of that is, again, it's all on the table. It's like, these people, they live in a world where people don't bat an eye at superheroes and robots and all this stuff. So, so the reason I ultimately ended up deciding to go this route was just because I felt that long term it offered me the greatest flexibility with all of the different kinds of things that I wanted to write. So, you know, again, I can do the relationship stuff, but if I need a break from that, I can go do just some, like, a whole book about some crazy action and like a supervillain and stuff. You know, and the humor is all still there because I get to do a lot of you know, general game parody. I'm not necessarily tied to exactly what's going on in the you know, in the real gaming industry, but rather I can sort of, I guess, almost in a way like if you watch Law and Order, sometimes they'll take like the ripped from the headline stuff and they'll just kind of change it around, and they'll tell a similar story, but they get to like move around their own elements and add their own twist on it. So that's kind of what I will also get to do with this universe. So long story short, you know, why did I go superheroes? Just because for me, I felt like it would be the most fun for the longest amount of time. You know, like whereas, you know, keeping it like it was, I thought it might get stale for me in like 3, 4, 5 years. You know, I mean, I've got like tons and tons of notes written down for, you know, because there's just so much you can do with superheroes when you pull in, you know, all of this fantastical stuff. So yeah, that's it. I just thought it would be, it made me the most excited to write. So is there a possibility that Ted might be a supervillain? Asks Strays. I'm not gonna. I don't know. I will say I have no real concrete plans for that in the first 5 issues. What happens further out from that, I don't know. But he's not one of the characters that is really at the top of my list to bring back. Ted was never even really one of my favorite characters in the original storyline. He was added because, and this is way back in like 2003, 2004. You know, and my forum was very small, and I participated a lot in the forum. And some of the forum users were joking around about Scott, and they suggested that he have a pet penguin with a laser on his head. And so I was like, fuck it. I threw in a penguin. You know, just really kind of an in-joke with the forum people, but, you know, then I was stuck with him, and so, I won't say, I'm not going to say it's impossible, I'm not going to say absolutely not, but I will say that as far as Ted goes, he's not really on my list. Let's see, so Pablo asks, does Ethan have superpowers, or is he like Batman? He does have a superpower, but if you were not at that point in the story yet, so I'm going to just not spoil that. Let's see, what are we on? Page 6. I think like a few more, like 3, 4, 5 more pages, you'll see it. So he does have a superpower, but for the most part, he's pretty much just like, you know, like Batman without necessarily all of the physical prowess. All right, Economics asks, he says that I said in the starting post for the reboot that you'd be doing a certain number of issues a year. Do you have a set timeline and ending for the story, or are you just going to let it run its course? Yeah, no, this is an ongoing thing as far as I'm concerned. It's, I'm not going into this thinking, okay, I'm going to do 15 issues and I'm out. I don't have an end point for these characters in mind. Like most things, I'm sure that eventually somewhere way down the road this is going to end, but I'm fairly certain that I'm going to get at least another 10 years out of this, if not longer. You know, I went into this and engineered this so that it would be something that I would be excited about writing long term. So no, I'm not going in here trying to, you know, do a finite number of issues. You know, I will go, I will write these characters again until I feel like I have nothing more to say with them. But I don't expect that'll be for a long time. Führer Sumi says, when will we say Chef Bryan again? I don't know. He's not, you know, he's not part of this reboot, obviously. He's not even really part of the one-shots or whatnot. Again, Chef Bryan kind of went away with the end of CAD 1.0. He may come back for one reason or another, but I'm not like over here itching to bring him back. Are there going to be any references to their previous stories from 2 years ago? Asks Kuraskor. okay, and then he goes on to add like multidimensional stuff. No, there's not going to be any concrete link between this universe and the previous universe. It's two entirely separate things. If you want to think of them, if it helps you to think of them as an alternate timeline or an alternate dimension or whatever, go for it. But I will never actually connect. There's never going to be anything where like Analogue and DPad are fighting some like crazy magic villain and he opens a portal and they see old Ethan and Lucas. That's not going to be the case. There may be references. I actually threw in one kind of little reference to the previous storyline. Some of you may catch it. We're not there yet if you're reading these daily, but the most I will do is sort of like little in-jokes, Easter eggs for people who read the previous story. They like a little nod and a wink to what came before, but as far as I'm concerned, there's no actual tangible connection between their two universes. So Dan DD Josh 2000 asks, are Ethan and Lucas going to save the world / fight major villains, or are they going to be smaller heroes? In their world, they are currently the smaller heroes. They are, they're like kind of niche, where we pick up with them at this point in the story. They've kind of been doing their superhero thing for a little while, but mostly just like petty crime. They stop muggings. They just, the small shit. And so in this comic book, they actually get their first real taste of fighting a villain. It's a new villain that shows up in the city. It falls into their laps, and 2 seconds. And so that's really their first, real experience with any true superheroism. And then from here on out, what we'll do is, we'll see them kind of, in issue 2, they'll be grappling with, their first little taste of it. And, but there are always going to be, Omnitropolis has like their quote unquote Superman or Batman, which is like kind of like considered the real superhero of the city. And so currently they're sort of, Ethan and Lucas are sort of small time, but whether or not they ever, geez, like seriously, take a hint. Whether or not they ever work like their way up the legitimacy ladder and become viewed as honest to goodness superheroes, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. John Wolfwood asks, will the players be part of the Ethan Lucas reboot? Absolutely not. No, the players are their own thing. The players are reserved for the one-shots and their campaign thing, and that is it. And Ethan and Lucas, I mean, when you see an Analogue and DPad issue, that's it. That's them. That is the, you can expect 22 to 28 pages of just pure storyline plot. It'll all be canon. And that was kind of like the main reason behind the reboot is to sort of separate that. Okay, so Coruscore asks, did I ever think about having Ethan and Lucas turn into superheroes in my old series instead of rebooting like I did? It was certainly, I think very briefly it did kind of cross my mind, but simply them becoming superheroes did not solve the fundamental issue that I had with Ethan and Lucas in their original incarnation. And the problem that I had was not simply that I had run out of things to write about or situations to put them in. The problem that I had is that over the 10 years that I had written Ethan, being so very focused on getting to the joke and Ethan being like this wacky kind of crazy guy, is that a lot of the time I glossed over any of the redeeming qualities that would qualify him as anybody that anybody would actually want to stay friends with for a decade. I felt like there's a certain point where everything that he did would stop being cute and it would get really annoying. The older they got or what have you. So that was my biggest problem with Ethan and Lucas, and not something that could be simply remedied by retconning or changing their vocation, so to speak. That was something I feel like I really needed to just go back to square one and and start over and craft an entirely I don't want to say an entirely new personality for Ethan, but rather a better rounded personality for Ethan. Okay, so CMO 1982 asks, will Kate Finnigan continue to work with you, or will you be using multiple inkers? I'm a huge fan of Kate's work. So she did the colors on Analogue and DPad issue 1. And actually she's going to be taking over. We're going to be starting on the Starcaster Chronicles issue 2 pretty soon. So as far as I'm concerned, Kate is my new colorist. I liked Nicholas's colors on issue 1 of the Starcaster Chronicles. I just, I like Kate's stuff a little bit better. She was amazing to work with. She brought a lot of great ideas to the table. Her colors are obviously fantastic. So for as long as she wants to work with me, I'm planning to work with her. So she'll be taking over coloring duties for the Starcaster Chronicles going forward, as well as the Analogue and DPad issues. Let's see. So what's the deal with the booths in... Okay, so in today's comic, what's the deal with the booths? Do they still own a game store, or is it like a Comic-Con with actual heroes? No. So what they're at, and so this is like kind of a minor spoiler, but I'm just going to go there anyway. They're at sort of like a video game expo, like almost like an E3 trade show for their city, and they are there representing the game store that they own, which is Game Haven. And they are there, you can't really see it in the signage, but they're there promoting like the idea of the indie game store, where across the way is basically like the GameStop conglomerate, which is taking over the industry and pushing all the little guys out. So it's not a Comic-Con with heroes. It's rather just in their day jobs or their day-to-day life, they do own a game store together. And that is what they're participating in the expo in that capacity. Okay, so Pablo asks, what about Winterine Mist? Does it still exist there? It does not currently exist in this universe, but with that said, I am not against the idea of working it in at some point as something that already exists, or maybe comes about as a result of some actions that Analogue and DPad take. So I'm not saying that it's gone, but it's not there currently. Maybe it'll be there someday. So Fure Tsunami or Sumi asks, will you continue with the same delivery method, i.e. daily, after you've written an issue? Or will you go back to your old method of having one-shots in between stories? Well, that's... I guess I don't understand the first part of that question. So I'll just explain what the delivery method is. So obviously, because this issue was completed before you ever even got page 1, I'm able to update every day until it's completed. When that's completed, which I think is November 26th, 27th, I think, is when the last issue, a page of this issue will go up. Then we resume a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule with one-shots for a little while, 2 to 3 weeks, whatever I feel like, and then we're going to get into issue 2 of the Starcaster Chronicles. So basically, there will always be one-shots and gaming-related stuff in between any of the story stuff that I do. The Analogue and DPad stuff will always be completed in its entirety ahead of time, so those will always update daily in the interest of getting these stories out quickly, because again, this is 28 pages, so if I was telling the story the way I used to do stories a few years ago, we'd be looking at 3 months of updates just to tell this one story. With this new method of getting the comic done ahead of time and then doing it daily, now I'm only taking up a month worth of the website updates, which means that we get back to doing some one-shots sooner. I'm not locked out of like doing the video game review and commentary stuff for quite as long, and just in general, I'm getting more content out. you know, it'll be more issues of Analogue and DPad and more issues of the Starcaster Chronicles. So Greeny asks, will there be an origin story on the superpowers, or will that just be explained in time? Yes, there will be an origin story. Probably not for a few issues, but at some point, once I've established these characters in the Foundation and we've gone through some adventures with them, I will go back and sort of like to the beginning and just show you how they came to have their superpowers and how they dealt with discovering they had these superpowers in the very, very first days following that. So that'll come, but I just thought it would be, I didn't want to start there. I thought it would be more interesting because it sort of just jump right in and then go back and tell that story a little bit later. You know, because at that point you'll know the characters, and I think it'll be a little bit more interesting to then see how they came about having these powers. So Todd Dayton asks, are there already major established supervillains in the universe, and any explanation for the existence of superpowers? So yes, there are. They live in a world where there are other superheroes and supervillains, and actually Lucas or DPad mentioned it on page 5. He was talking about Prime and his supervillains like Obliteron. So Omnitropolis does already have a couple major superheroes, and those superheroes have their cadre of villains. Ethan and Lucas do not have their own villains yet. They will come to sort of amass their own rogues gallery, so to speak. But yeah, Analogue and DPad are not the only superheroes in the world. They're not even the most powerful. I mean, they are. And you'll see in some future issues that they're almost even kind of looked down upon by like the real superheroes. Sort of because of their gaming theme and whatnot. So there's going to be like some interesting interaction in the future between, again, Omnitropolis is more established Superman type or Batman type superheroes, and then these kind of new up and comers. So let's see. Did I ever consider making Ethan and Lucas have a hero nemesis relationship, or was their relationship not something you wanted to mess with too much? Yeah, pretty much the second point. I really didn't want to mess too much with the dynamic. I mostly wanted to tweak it a little bit, but I didn't want to reinvent the wheel there, and I don't think that people would have tolerated that drastic a change to that dynamic. All right, so here's a good question from Raximus. Are you ever going to release CAD 1.0 in its entirety via download? So I've been thinking a lot on this lately because I do have to get, I really do need to get CAD 1.0 out there as a collection in its entirety. Previously what I've been doing is I've been releasing these books of 150 comic strips at a time, and it's taking me forever. Like I don't put the books out fast enough, and the reason for that is that I had done commentary on every page, and 5 books in, coming up with interesting stuff to talk about is a bit of a chore. So right now I have 4 books out, and that only gets us to like 2005, which means to get us to 2012, where that series ended, we're looking at like 8 or 9 more books. And at best maybe I could put out 1 a year, which is like another decade before that whole thing is available in book form. So I'm starting to kind of go in a different direction, and what I'm thinking about doing is releasing an omnibus, or like just a massive collection, basically the first 10 years all in one shot. So that would also allow me to do something else, which is to essentially separate all of the Ethan and Lucas stuff and then everything else. So I could have like 1 volume that was just everything Ethan and Lucas, so that you could actually sit down and read the entire any comic that Ethan and Lucas were ever in that first in 1.0 from start to finish. And then if you just wanted the gaming stuff or like the random other stuff, that would be in a separate volume or 2 volumes. I don't know how many volumes this would be. We're talking about like 1,800 comic strips here. So that's the direction I'm heading now, is to create an omnibus, just get everything out there in one giant collection that people could purchase. So obviously it would be available in book form. I would also probably make it available via digital download, which really answers your question. So yes, CAD 1.0 would be available in its entirety via download whenever I get around to doing this omnibus. Let's see, how many... Okay, so C Magic asks kind of a similar question. How many heroes are there in this world already? Are Ethan and Lucas going to get into spats with other heroes because they're going after the same bad guy? Yes, there is going to be some crossover, you know, especially with where, you know, the Omnitropolis's main hero is kind of almost like a diva, and again, like I said earlier, looks down on these sort of, you know, amateurs, so to speak. And so when Ethan and Lucas, or rather Analogue and DPad, start gaining a little bit of traction, you know, we're going to see a little bit of jealousy and, you know, territorialism from that. So there will be some overlap, you know, between some of the other heroes in the world. I don't foresee, at least in the first, you know, handful of issues, getting into like heroes in other cities and other parts of the country and stuff. You know, we're going to be fairly focused on Omnitropolis, but certainly in the future we may explore and broaden our horizons a little bit. A rogue named Lenwe asks, what are the major differences in Ethan and Lucas's personalities compared to the previous series? And so I didn't end the previous series because I was unhappy necessarily with their personalities. You know, I liked that Ethan was a little off his rocker, you know, had a few screws loose. And I wanted to keep that in the reboot, and I hope that so far that comes across, that he is kind of like that. So it was more about making tweaks to their personalities in order to make their dynamic more believable. And in order for that to happen, what I felt I needed to do is, so Ethan needed to be, he can still be silly and crazy and all that stuff, but he also needs to be a little bit considerate, and I also have to be aware if what he's doing is also, like, you know, indirectly being an outright asshole. So again, and for Ethan, it was more about creating a more well-rounded character. So he can do the crazy stuff, but I also need to show him being a good friend. And, you know, and eventually a good boyfriend when we get to that, or whatnot, so that you, the reader, can look at him and say, okay, he does these crazy things that might be disruptive or get on someone's nerves, but, you know, he's also a really good person, as evidenced by these other things he does. So then it makes sense that Lucas would continue to hang out with him despite the silly stuff that he does, because, you know, I've shown you this better side of Ethan, that you know, and that was always how I viewed Ethan, but some of it didn't come across, like, because I just took for granted that I knew that, you know, in my heart of hearts, that Ethan was a buffoon who, you know, he meant well. He wasn't out to hurt people, or just be a dick to people, but you know, sometimes I forgot to make sure that I displayed that in the comic strip, and so therefore all you're seeing, or all the reader is seeing, is sort of the stuff that he's doing that makes everybody's life more difficult. And so for my part, you know, going in, now I get to, you know, my focus will be showing both sides of Ethan. And then the other thing was, for Lucas, I needed to pull him back just a little bit from being the complete straight man, to Ethan's crazy guy. So Lucas needs to have just a little bit, you know, of crazy in him himself, and I think that's probably obvious that he's, you know, here he is side by side, out fighting crime with, you know, with Ethan, and I'm excited to do the origin story, because I think you'll get a kick out of how that sort of came to be, how, you know, how Ethan got Lucas on board with doing that. So again, so that, you know, it's not like, I don't think there are any major differences in their personalities, but it's more about telling, creating a more well-rounded character, and just tweaking things, to facilitate that, to facilitate more believable characters. Alright, so Clever DD asks, what is going to be the main focus, the heroic side of characters or their human stories? The answer to that is both. In this first issue, there's definitely a heavy bias towards the heroic stuff, because I really wanted to establish that right off the bat, because I think it's easier to go in whole hog with that and then scale it back a little bit to do the regular everyday life stuff. But we'll be doing both. Some issues will be really well balanced. Half the issue will be heroic stuff, half of it will be everyday stuff. One issue might be entirely at-home stuff, and another issue might be entirely fighting a supervillain. I mean, I'm not trying to gear the entire thing one way or the other. Overall, I want there to be a pretty decent balance. Are any future issues, Analogue and DPad or Starcaster, going to have polls like they had in the past? So the Choose Your Own Adventure stuff is strictly limited to the Starcaster Chronicles. That is, with the Choose Your Own Adventure and letting you guys help kind of direct the story, that will always be a part of the Starcaster Chronicles. That will never be a part of Analogue and DPad. For Analogue and DPad, I need to entirely control the narrative. But I went into the Starcaster Chronicles with the idea that it would partially be a Choose Your Own Adventure, and so that's always going to be an element. With that said, some issues of the Starcaster Chronicles will have more choices than others, because again, at the end of the day, more important than letting you guys make choices is that I'm telling a story that makes sense and that's going somewhere. So ultimately, I need to control the narrative, but with the Starcaster Chronicles, when I write those, I go in knowing that I'm going to let you guys make some choices about, maybe on our way from point A to point B. I'm deciding what point B is, but I'm letting you guys decide how we get there. So yeah, so when you see the Starcaster Chronicles, you'll know that there are going to be some choices to be made, but Analogue and DPad is a completely hands-off experience as far as you guys are concerned. Okay, so here's a good question. Kyle Kez asks, out of Ethan and Lucas, who's the hero and who's the sidekick? Do they see themselves as partners and equals? Will an argument over the dynamic of the relationship possibly become a problem in the future? Yes, that is something that is going to be touched on in the future. Whether I'll say that I think that they're partners. I don't think that there isn't a sidekick thing there as far as I'm concerned. But as far as they're concerned, yeah, you can expect a conversation on that topic to arise. If not in a future issue, it would definitely happen probably in the origin issue, like right when they're getting going with this whole thing and kind of figuring out what they're doing. Okay, Raximus asks, touching back on the Omnibus, do you have any idea on how much it would cost to purchase? I have no clue because I have not even started researching this. What I have to do is, first I have to comb through those first 18, that first 10 years, those 1,800 comic strips, and I have to separate the Ethan and Lucas stuff from the rest. So then I need to see how many Ethan and Lucas strips there are and how many of the rest. So then I'm going to know if it's going to be, because I don't even really know right now if it's an even split. If I could just do a 2-volume thing and have it be Ethan and Lucas and then the gaming stuff. It might be like a 3-volume thing where it's Ethan and Lucas and then 2 volumes of one-shots, because again, I don't know what the split is. And then I have to figure out what my layout's going to be. Ideally, I would have 2 comic strips per page to cut down on the number of pages. But again, I really have no idea because I haven't started pricing any of that out. Though I wouldn't be surprised if it cost more than $50. I mean, we're talking about a couple of very large books. So we'll see. But I mean, it's I can guarantee you that it would be cheaper than if you had to buy 12 individual volumes of the way I was doing it before. And then the second part of your question, would there be a price difference between the physical version and the digital version? Yes, there would be, simply because most of the cost of the physical version is in the printing. I mean, that's and the shipping and all that stuff. So I certainly would intend to mark down the digital version to account for that, that difference. Okay, so Dan DD Josh 2000 asks, for the Starcaster Chronicles, will we see a decision web like you did before? No, because there isn't really, because this is an ongoing thing, I can't really, not only can I not really write out the decision, like, alright, so with the Ethan McManus Space Chronicles thing, I would start at point A, and then I would have point B, C, D, like all the way to M. Like I would just like when I wrote Ethan McManus Space Archaeologist, I was letting that go just wherever the fuck, along like a dozen different wildly different paths. With the Starcaster Chronicles, I do have an overall narrative in mind. So again, at least for the first issue, here's the thing: is that until we actually get involved with the Starcaster, which we don't even have, it's the series is named after the Starcaster, and we haven't even found it yet. So at least until we get to that point, I kind of have an idea of where I want it to go, and what I'm letting you guys decide is to varying degrees of severity how we get there, and in a way almost how fucked up Court is by the time he gets there. Like, I mean, like, I'm probably not going to let him die before we get there, but he, him and his ship and whatever could be really messed up. I mean, they could have a really rough time of getting there, is what I'm saying. But then after that, it might open up a little bit, and so we'll see. But I can't. So what I'm saying is I can't really show you a web, at least not anytime soon, because it would essentially spoil future issues to show you the path not taken and that kind of stuff. So Clever DD asks, will Analogue and DPad's adventures be grim, serious, or comedic at heart? It's always going to be on the lighthearted side. There will definitely be some moments of some feels and some darker stuff, but for the most part, it's about having fun. I'm not trying to write Batman. I'm trying to write, like, I don't know, some of like the pulp, like the old pulp serials from like the 50s and the 60s. Like where superheroes were fun, and it was, there's not gonna, like, let me put it this way: I'm never gonna have a moment where, in any seriousness, Ethan is like, oh, I don't want to be a superhero anymore. It's too much of a burden, the responsibility, and all that bullshit. I mean, Ethan and Lucas, they're in this like whole hog. They're like, fuck yeah, we get to be superheroes. I mean, it's fun for them. They want to be in this, and so it's always, my goal with this series is always to be, gravitate towards the lighthearted side of things and keep things fun. They're always going to be making jokes, and there's going to be a lot of parody involved, and so. Even though at times maybe I'll serious it up for part of an issue to just to add gravity to the situation or whatever, it's never going to stay there, and it's never going to be just like a dark, like if I wanted to, let me put it this way: if I wanted to do like serious superhero stuff, it wouldn't be video game related superheroes. Okay, so here's a good one. Mega Butler, will we be seeing any comics featuring Ethan and Lucas outside of the issues like the one-shots? No. Ethan and Lucas are for Analogue and DPad. The players are for the one-shots. Those are their respective turfs, and that is where they will stay. I'm not going to get back into a situation where you're seeing, where I'm using my certain characters for other things, and then the lines between what's canon and what isn't is blurred, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so Kyle Kez asks, how far in advance do I have the new series with Analogue and DPad planned? I have a rough outline for the next 5 issues. I am actually, as we speak right now, in the middle of writing the script for issue number 2, so I mean that's chugging along pretty well. So I have an outline, a pretty solid outline for the first 5 issues, and then I have just like a general arc for the next 10. Where certain things that I'd like to see, but again, anything after you know, I don't like to plan that far ahead with any sort of concrete you know, idea writing, because things need to stay at least a little bit fluid. I need to be able to adapt to you know, little changes in you know, I may write the next couple issues and find like that one villain that I thought was interesting you know, actually spawns an idea for something else entirely. And you know, again, you just gotta I have to stay fluid with it, but rest assured that I have a good number of ideas for, I mean, even just coming up with villains for these two heroes. You know, I have like a dozen villains just jotted down right now, and then, you know, with those villains recurring over issues, I mean, there's a lot of content there to mine. All right, so C Magic asks, have I thought about going to print per issue so that we might see Analogue and DPad in comic shops? I did. Originally, I had thought to myself, okay, well, you know, yeah, I'll put these out in physical issues, but the bottom line is that the economics of individual comic book issues suck. And so in order to even make it worth it, you know, I mean, I would need to charge like $5 or $6 for a single issue of a comic book. And not only that, I would have to print kind of a ridiculous amount of them. So I think that as far as print for these ones, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wait until I have 5 or 6 issues of it, and then I'll collect that into a trade paperback. At which point, then that makes a lot of sense to have you know, a physical copy of those books. But the individual issues, you know, even the for Marvel and DC and stuff, like a lot of those issues get sent back and just thrown away and whatever. There's a lot of waste in those issues because after an issue of a comic book is new, except for the handful that end up in like the back issue boxes in comic book stores, you know, if you're not buying an issue new, you're buying a trade paperback down the line. So having a bunch of individual issues sitting around in our store is not really doesn't really make a lot of economical sense. Clever DD asks if I'm going to continue the players sketches. Yes, the players will still be a part of the comic. Again, they'll be in the one shots, and I do enjoy doing the campaign stuff for that fantasy element. So that'll continue to take place from time to time. You know, the goal was always to you know, have a balance, like a 50-50 balance between the one-shot stuff and the story stuff. And so for the past 2 years, the comic has sort of been out of balance, and the players have sort of had to shoulder more of that weight than they were ever really intended to. But now that we have Ethan and Lucas and Analogue and DPad back, we have the Starcaster Chronicles. Now I feel like I can finally sort of strike that equilibrium of you know, 50-50 and going back and forth between those two elements. Okay, so Mega Butler asks, Ethan was rather idiotic at times, but was smart enough to make a robot. How smart is current Ethan? He's not really... Let's see, how do I do this without spoiling the issue? I would say that current Ethan is maybe not like smart enough to design a robot. He has help for that sort of stuff, but he's still gonna have some moments like some of those idiot savant moments, but not to the point where he, I think, has just suddenly acquires like a ridiculous amount of engineering and computing skills that would have been necessary to create a sentient robot. Oh, here's a good question that a few people have asked. Will the old Analogue and DPad be made available online, and is it canon? It is not canon. This is essentially a reboot of those first few Analogue and DPad issues I did way back in 2006 as well. So that I'm wiping the slate clean there as well. They're obviously still out there, but they are not part of this canon. But I will release them somewhere a little bit down the line. I don't want to do it right now because I don't want to, like, we just started this and I don't want to confuse people with what is canon and what isn't. But maybe next year sometime, after we've had maybe 2 or 3 issues of you know, of this current run. I'll make them available online for free in sort of like a, hey, do you want to, you know, if you're curious to see, you know, the previous incarnation of these characters, you know, I'll throw them up online at that point. Oh, all right. So here, a couple of people have asked me why Lucas appears to be tan or you know, more tan. It's not that he's tan. It was more that because this was a fresh start, you know, this was my opportunity to make any changes that I was going to make to these characters was going to happen now. And I certainly didn't want to I'm not going to drastically change them. However, one thing I didn't want to do is just make them both the same shade of like pale pasty white. And so, whereas Ethan is of Celtic descent, Lucas was always of Polish descent, and so in Poland you have you know, a lot of mix of the DNA with you know, the Turks and the Gypsies and you know, some of the Arab countries and all that stuff, and so you can find some, you know, some Polish people of the darker complexion. So I really just wanted to kind of make him not, you know, you know, I mean, he's still white, but he's not, you know, like pale white. And so again, I mean, everybody has a different skin tone. So this was, you know, I felt like one area that my previous run lacked a little bit was diversity, and so that's something that I want to tackle in this upcoming story. You know, is having more female leads and more you know, characters of different color and stuff. So you know, I couldn't go so far as to just race swap Lucas, but you know, like I said, everybody has slightly different complexions, and so he's got a slightly darker complexion. Will the sillies continue to be relegated to weekends only? I mean, I don't really have a set schedule for the sillies. I do 2 a week, and so I pretty much will do them whenever I get a good idea for one, as long as I'm doing 2 a week. Certainly now that we've got storylines back on the website that aren't going to be dealing with the topical stuff, the sillies will become you know, even more important for that, for me be able to touch on the you know, topics of the day and new releases and that sort of thing. But you know, and that was why way back when, that was why I originally started the sillies, was so that while I was in the middle of a storyline, I still had an outlet to talk about a new release or some piece of gaming news, and so that's the function that they still serve. All right, so yeah, is work ever going to interfere with the superhero stuff? And I think that is you know, I think that's pretty standard superhero fare. I mean, that's one of the things that we love about superheroes, and to kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent, you know, a lot of superheroes these days are kind of losing their secret identity. For like Iron Man, you know, has done away with the idea of a secret identity and this kind of and that kind of stuff, and you know, so it's almost like having the secret identity is almost a thing of the past, but I still really enjoy that, and I think that there's a lot of interesting writing to, you know, there's some interesting topics there where you have to juggle basically in alternate life, or like an alternate personality, and how do you do that, and how do you find balance in there, and what becomes more important to you. So that's certainly a topic I'm excited to explore with these characters, especially as you know, we start touching on things like relationships and that kind of stuff, and how much do you tell somebody, and you know, all that sort of stuff. So there's definitely going to be some clash between their two lives. Basically, they're leading 2 separate lives, and you can't really keep them separate forever in a complete, you know, it's going to get messy, and I think that's really fun, is when things get messy. So Bloodstalker asks, just curious, is there still plans for a website relaunch? Yes, there is. Probably in Q1 2015. We have a lot of ideas, but one of the big features that I'm driving towards with the website Reboot is let's see, I guess I would say an archive that is separated by keyword in a way. My goal is to be, you know, if you come to my website, my goal is to allow you to read just the console war comics, for instance. Like if you sat down and you said, I just want to read all the console war comics, you should be able to click on a button that says console war and, you know, be taken to an archive which lets you just page through all of those comics. Same thing with Analogue and DPad. Same thing with the Starcaster Chronicles. Whereas right now you can search through the archives and you can find those, and then you can go find the next issue and you can jump around a little bit, but you can't just hit next through them because or you're going to be jumping over a bunch of stuff that happens in between. So that's my big feature for the you know, for the upcoming website redesign is to have all that stuff kind of divided up, so you can, you know, if you just want you know, like the Analogue and DPad stuff or the campaign stuff or what have you, any of the various things that I do, that is that's the big plan. But yeah, so I mean, it is something we are still working on. We just push it off until after the holidays because, you know, we don't want to get into this thing like right around Thanksgiving, Christmas. My thoughts are racing. When you do your next book signing tour, will you bring a live action Analogue and DPad along, or will you leave that up to the fans? Yeah, I'll leave that up to the fans. I mean, I would be thrilled if these are characters that people enjoy enough that they wanna cosplay as. You know, I mean, I've had people cosplay as the players and as Ethan and Lucas, and I've even gotten a few Chef Bryans in my day, but let's be honest, those are all fairly simple costumes. I've never really had you know, any characters with like an actual costume with a, you know, that somebody could dress up as. So you know, we'll see. Maybe, you know, I certainly would love to see that someday, and maybe we will. Okay, so Mega Butler asked, did you change the style of the issues comics to make things easier or to better fit the superhero style? I don't really know what you're referring to in terms of the style of the issue. Do you mean the art style, or do you mean I guess the release format of like once per day, or the comic books? You know, if you can clarify that question a little bit, I can probably answer it for you. Okay, Mega Butler, yeah. For as far as the art style goes, I mean, I didn't consciously alter anything. I think it's just a matter of you know, that my art style is constantly evolving, and you know, I'm constantly trying to push it forward and get better and correct mistakes and that kind of stuff. And so it's really been well, all right. Well, there are two elements to it. First of all, you know, I'm always trying to push forward and get better at this, and it's been 2 years since you last saw Ethan and Lucas, and you know, so I've improved quite a bit in those 2 years, and so naturally they're going to look different. But the other aspect of it is that with the way that I'm doing these issues, where I'm completing them in their entirety before putting them online, so I'm not working on the same deadline that I work at, where I'm doing the daily strips, where, you know, I'm doing a comic strip today and it has to go online tomorrow. So I'm able to take my time a little bit more with you know, with these more comic book format things. I can put more detail in. And you know, and that makes all the difference in this sort of thing. You know, the sort of deadline you have and how much time you can spend on it. So I think between those two things is probably what accounts for you know, what you're talking about, the change in the art style and whatnot. Mr. Squiggles88 asks, how long between issues can we expect? That's really tough to say right now. This first issue was really difficult to get out because again, I was basically doing, so I was working on these 28 pages, which is, in terms of, you know, my normal updates, 28 pages is like 3 months worth of work for the normal strip. So I was doing that while also doing the normal strip. So I was basically doing like twice as much work for 2 months, or well, 4 months. You know, so that's why this one took so long. But now, you know, this is updating every day for the next month, and so I don't have to do a daily strip right now. I still have to do the sillies, but I don't have to do a daily strip. So right now, I'm already working on issue 2 and issue 2 of the Starcaster Chronicles. So now that I kind of have this this little step forward, this little buffer zone, Hopefully I can keep these issues coming out fairly quickly. And like I've said earlier, my intention is to alternate between issues of the Starcaster Chronicles and issues of Analogue and DPad. So without committing to anything, to be fair, right now my plan is, let's see, this issue ends late November, so we'll probably do a couple weeks of one-shots to do some gaming stuff. I will probably start issue 2 of the Starcaster Chronicles right before Christmas, and then so my goal would be for like late January, early February to have to be starting issue 2 of Analogue and DPad. Again, those are rough estimates. I got to see what happens. But my overall goal is if I could put out 3 issues of each year, I'd be pretty happy. If I could put out 4 issues of each year, I'd be thrilled. So again, I just have to, we just got to see, now that I've got some momentum going, I just got to keep it rolling and see how that works out. Oh, all right. So Lord Viperius. Anything else in the style of the Games Bowl? I would certainly like to do more prose work in the future. Yes, probably something a little bit more akin to The Evil Within, which was a mix between comics and prose. Again, my entire focus for the past year really has been getting going on this reboot. So. Now that I have the reboot going, like I said, I got to keep this momentum going. I got to keep issues coming out. We can't be going like a year between issues. That's ridiculous. So this is my focus right now. It's just what I'm doing. Certainly down the line, I'd like to find some time to try and fit in some even some more projects. And definitely I do enjoy writing prose. So hopefully I can do that a little bit more as well. If you found the popularity of your issues was greater than your one-shots, would you move to only issues, or will one-shots always be there? I think one-shots will always be there because that's something that I need from a creative standpoint to kind of step back. I mean, I love telling stories and I love creating characters and that kind of stuff, but at the same time, in between that, I really enjoy the time where I can step back and just make random jokes about one thing, just whatever's going on that don't have to be tied to some greater narrative. So for me, that's always going to be a part of Ctrl+Alt+Delete is that balance of having both, sort of having my cake and eating it too in a way. And it also speaks to the fact that I've been able to do this for 12 years and not burn out, because I have all of these outlets for everything that I want to do, and I'm not just stuck doing like one thing day in, day out for 10 years. I get to mix it up a lot, and that keeps it really fresh and exciting for me. And it's why I still love my job 12 years in, and I'm not like over here trying to quit and move on to something else. I mean, I still enjoy doing this, and a lot of that is because I get to flex all of these different creative or scratch all of these different creative itches. Okay, here's a kind of a good question. SNES All-Star asks, do I feel like once you've made the characters that they tell the story themselves? There's definitely a big aspect to that. For instance, I have Ethan and Lucas and Analogue and DPad as their alter egos now. So for a lot of this, I really just have to sort of come up with a situation, and then I almost kind of know how they would react. I mean, writing the dialogue for them is a cinch, because I know what Ethan would say in a given situation. I know what Lucas would say in a given situation. So, I'm more kind of coming up with the set pieces, and then I just let Ethan and Lucas be Ethan and Lucas in that regard. Court for the Starcaster Chronicles, Court and Spec, it's a little bit different because I haven't lived with those characters for as long, so there's a little bit more guiding that needs to be done there in terms of finding, like I just actually today I put the finishing touches on the script for issue 2 of the Starcaster Chronicles, and I went back through and I reread all of Court's dialogue, and I thought, and what I was thinking to myself as I read through is like, okay, does this all fall in line with the character that I envisioned? I mean, is this does this all speak to the type of man that I think he is, and that kind of stuff. So, you know, but again, once I'm 5-6 issues into the Starcaster Chronicles, I feel like I'll know Court so well that you know, it'll be similar to what I experienced with Ethan and Lucas. Memieko asks, do I plan out the stories beforehand, or do you let the end of a story unravel as you write it? I definitely try to plan stuff out beforehand. I really only plan things out in any sort of concrete fashion, like in this case, since we're talking about comic book issues here, like 2 to 3 issues ahead, and then after that I have some general ideas, but I try to remain fairly flexible. So, you know, and the reason for that is because one thing that I try to do, or that I will be trying to do, and whatnot, is that you want to have, like, especially when you're tackling comic book issues, you want to have your A storyline, which is like your primary storyline that's carrying the issue. It's the plot that you're dealing with at that given moment. But also, you need to try and pepper in some B storyline kind of in the background. And then what happens is, and that's basically setup, that's foundation. So, you know, if I know what's going to happen in issue 3, then in issue 2 I can start peppering in B story leading up to, you know, and then what happens is essentially, you know, so you're going along with A story and you have B story following underneath it, and then when A story reaches its resolution, B story comes up and takes center stage, but you've already kind of laid a little bit of groundwork, so it's a natural transition. And in order to do that, you have to be thinking, at least to some degree, about what you're going to be doing, you know, a couple issues down the road. So it's mostly about finding a balance between letting new ideas in, not being so rigid that you're just stuck on a path and you're not flexible, and so you're like blocking out inspiration that may improve the project, but at the same time you can't just go in like with no idea and just be like, oh, I'll just figure it out as I go along, because then you're writing yourself into like this kind of disjointed, it's going to read like you're making up as you go along. So all right, so that's it. I've been doing this about an hour 15 minutes. I gotta stop. I gotta go do some other stuff. I appreciate everybody coming in and hanging out and asking me questions. If you enjoyed this, I will certainly try and do another Q&A in the future. I could definitely see us doing a Q&A maybe after the second issue of the Starcaster Chronicles comes out. We can talk a little bit about Court and his sci-fi universe and all that kind of stuff. And then, like I said, if you missed any of this, I'll have it up on YouTube tomorrow so you can watch the whole thing. And I hope that you all continue to enjoy the first issue of Analogue and DPad, and I guess that's it.